Malik Beasley is currently under investigation for a serious gambling allegation from the U.S. District Attorney Office, which honestly changes a lot for the Detroit Pistons. Let's talk about it all right here on Top Title Detroit. Let's go.
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
What's good? Welcome to Top Title Detroit. I am Eric Vincent, your host and Detroit Pistons beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Before we get started on the news, please help us grow the channel by liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. We're getting close to 400 subscribers, moving up quicker and quicker up to our goal of 1,000 by the end of the year, and we can really make that happen with your support. So please tell a friend to subscribe and lock in with us here at Top Title Detroit. Let's get into this bombshell, man. A really bad story came out. Malik Beasley being investigated by the U.S. District Attorney Office about a gambling allegation that goes back to the 2023-2024 season when he was with the Milwaukee Bucks, not when he was with the Pistons. And this could honestly not come at a worse time for the Detroit Pistons. Free agency kicks off this week. Apparently, they were in conversation with Beasley. Apparently, both sides were locked in on an extension and a figure and a number and wanted to be a part of the same future and path, with the Pistons in the franchise. But this, unfortunately, puts a huge wrench in all of that. The Pistons, I don't really believe, have an opportunity now to sign him because of these allegations. Unfortunately, at this point, they are just allegations, so it's an ongoing investigation. He has not been charged yet. This is what Shams has reported and confirmed, that there is no crime that has been committed or confirmed at this point based on what we know. But even all that we know is still not a good sign for the Pistons. Like, this is pretty troubling. Arguably your second best player last season after Jaden Ivey went down with his injury is now basically gone from being one of the top priorities for the Pistons this offseason in terms of free agency and re-signing him. And now you're left with a huge hole in your roster where your shooting is now a deficiency. You don't really have the same depth in terms of veteran leadership or even shooting and scoring, with Beasley now kind of left on the shelf at this point. This is really bad. This is really, really bad. We already knew that Tim Hardaway Jr. was in free agency as well. It didn't really seem like there was a whole lot of legs to him returning or there being much interest in him returning based on what we have heard and seen thus far in the media. We had heard plenty of reports about Beasley and the Pistons wanting to reunite. I didn't really see a whole lot in regard to Tim Hardaway Jr. in the same conversations. However, now looking at this point, if they can't re-sign Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr. might have to be an option to kind of lure back. They already made a move that was a little proactive, seemingly, drafting Chaz Laneir from Tennessee, the sharpshooter from college, 5-year player. And he steps in immediately now at this point where the expectation is that he can play sooner than later if you're not going to be able to have Beasley on your roster. This honestly couldn't have come at a worse time for the Pistons. Again, Beasley was their biggest priority in the free agents market because Trajan Langdon spoke on wanting to rely on the internal growth of the young players to still be their top priority in terms of how they grow their winning product. And I understand all of that. However, one of the biggest factors of the growth from the young core that we saw was the help and the assistance of the veterans around them. And Beasley was one of those big acquisitions. Again, he was on, really to me, the best bargain deal in the league last season, playing for just 1 year on a $6 million deal, if I'm not mistaken, $8 million. And he vastly overproduced through that contract, hitting over 300 threes, being one of the best shooters in the NBA, morphing into a leader and a figure that was very, very important to the development of the Detroit Pistons and what their young core was building. JB Biggerstaff's ability to play him off the bench or in starting rotations when they were dealing with injuries, he was always there and always available. And unfortunately now, you have to go with another plan. You have to kind of go back to the drawing board and reconsider a lot of options because they were able to get pretty far in terms of what they did last season, even without, the health of an 100% and having roster with Jaden Ivey being hurt in the postseason. And even prior to that, Beef Stew being hurt in the playoffs, not being available basically since game one. Like, that changed a lot for them. And even bringing them back now, with the East getting stronger, with teams like Orlando adding pieces, Boston adding pieces to make sure they're not getting left out in the cold, even with Jason Tatum's injury. We've seen Cleveland add pieces. Like, a lot of teams are still getting active in the East. And I don't want to see the Pistons kind of get left out, even with the circumstances. Now, again, it's crazy the timing in which it mattered, but they still have to do something about this. Apparently, they were locked in with, making an offer for Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who I like as a player. I think it will be unfortunately kind of unfair to have the expectations of Malik Beasley type production from a guy like Walker. They're gonna have to lean on the team being taking the shooting leap more so than one player carrying it for an entire season. Like, Beasley's shooting again was at an exponentially high rate, so high that I even think it would be unfair to even assume that he could repeat what he did last season. At this point, you're not going to want to basically have that as the expectation for one guy. It's going to have to be the whole team that raises that production up as a whole. I think the Pistons were 17th in threes or 3-point efficiency last season. That's going to have to be lifted into the top 10 somehow. Cade is now going to have to improve and be more consistent from behind the line. Jaden Ivey, who shot over 40% last season, he's going to have to replicate somewhere pretty close to that, given the need that they have. Again, if they decide to bring back Tim Hardaway Jr., whoever other free agents that they bring in, those guys are going to have some lofty expectations to be able to suffice for that hole that they have in terms of their shooting and production from the wing and from their second unit. Potentially not having Beasley for this is massive. I'm trying not to panic and create too much hysteria, but this is a huge deal, unfortunately, for the Pistons. This is nothing that they can overlook. So much to the point, even to where Trajan again, he said he didn't want to be aggressive and go out there and be one of those teams that kind of forced a splash move, and I understand that. But at this point, I feel like all options should kind of be on the table. Again, you don't have to push in all the pieces of your young core to kind of suffice for that. I don't think that's going to be necessary at all. I do think, however, you should be looking to be a little bit more aggressive considering this now. Because, again, he was one of the biggest pieces that helped Cade be the elite level passer that he was. Ivy being able to find him in spots and openings. Like, they were able to draw attention away from Beasley to kind of force and set him up for open shots. Even the contested shots he was knocking down, like the way he was able to knock down movement shots off dribbles, off, dribble handoff situations. He scored and shot at an unbelievably high rate in many different areas. It wasn't just one. He wasn't just a catch and shoot specialist. He was covering a lot of the ground for the Pistons, especially in big games when they needed some big shots. He kind of struggled in the postseason, but regular season wise, he was fantastic basically all year. And I don't know. Again, this is going to be a big transaction and a big fix that Trajan has to make. I'm certain they're going to be active on it now. I'm certain they already are. Because again, this isn't something to just overlook and act like, okay, everything will be fine. We could just, shoe in whoever. Like, nah, this kind of expedites a lot of hope that the Pistons had from some of their young players. Even Asar and Ron Holland, I think you can kind of anticipate or hope to see some kind of growth from them as well in terms of their shooting, because the Pistons don't really have a lot of time in this open East to kind of just sit back and chill. They need to be able to make sure that they're still one of the better teams in the East and able to compete for at least 50 wins, 45 to 50 wins, I'll say, and for a playoff spot as well. There will be a lot of attention on Trajan Langdon and the Pistons front office to see what they do and how they pivot around this. Again, this is something that you can't really undersell or just kind of treat as something minor. This is a huge deal for the Pistons, and we'll see what plan they come up with to kind of make things work in response to it all. Stay locked in with us right here on Top Title Detroit. Free agency is kicking off this week. I'm going to stay as active as I possibly can with all the news, all the transactions that the Pistons make. We're going to talk about everything that they do. We're going to see if they're heading in the right direction, and hopefully they have a plan to kind of make things right based on what we've seen for right now. But talk to me in the comments. I would love to hear your reactions. What was your first thought when you heard the Malik Beasley news? When I saw it first, when I saw it on my phone from Shams, I thought it was that they were agreeing to an extension or that they were getting closer to making an agreement official. But nope, that was not what we got at all. So I would love to hear what your reaction was. What were you thinking? And how do you think the Pistons should respond to the news about Malik Beasley and their free agency plans? Talk to me in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel, lock in with me on my social media as well, at I am Eric Vincent. And you can check out all my beat reporting work on clutchpoints.com as well. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you again soon right here on Top Title Detroit. Peace.